So from the reason why I'm here today with you is because I'm a survivor, or thriver, as I like to call it, of domestic abuse and also parental abuse. You can't change other people, you can't change what's happened in the past, and you can only choose what you do moving forward. Learning to trust my intuition again took a good year probably of like knowing something was true but never like quite, and I don't mean relationship wise, I mean just in general, like whatever I thought, was learning to follow my gut again. When you're in a long-term abusive relationship, you're isolated and you don't have friends, and the friends that you do have at work don't really understand. So like the first date you go on after you've been in a relationship for a long time with an abuser, dating again or even making friends in your 40s, it's like a whole new thing, isn't it? Looking for answers was never going to be conducive and a good use of my energy, because you can wonder why someone's done something, but you're never going to find out really. So instead of that, using that energy to like focus on looking forward and building, a life that I deserve and that I want. So even subtle things like, I like your hair in a certain way, you look better without makeup, or I prefer you wearing trousers, or I don't like you wearing high heels. But they don't say to you, I don't want you to wear high heels, I don't want you to wear that red lipstick. It's more like, oh, you look prettier. And things like isolating you from your friend groups, like when you meet your new partner, which most of us do, and then first when you meet someone, you're all loved up and you want to be with them all the time, but you don't realize it's like when they don't want to integrate with your friends and they start to like distance you from your friends and family. And I think people don't show you who they are. I can't remember if I read it or heard it somewhere, but doesn't it take somebody a good 3 months? They can keep up pretending to be lovely for 3 months. And then after that's when you start to see the first kind of signs of cracks or, red flag behavior. But for the first 3 months, people are very good at putting on a really good show. And often by the time we've been with them for a few months, depending on what circumstances we're in, but if you're living with someone or something, look, you end up kind of making excuses or ignoring those little things, because you don't
Yeah.
realize that they're the start of something big.
My very first one was abusive, which I entered into when I was 14. And then coming out of that relationship and going into another relationship, because that is what I knew. Although I had an awareness of the physical abuse, I had no idea about the emotional, the psychological abuse that happens.
I think it's not really, again, not really till I've got a lot older and done my own coaching qualifications or my trauma qualifications, where I've realized actually, a lot of the things that we grew up with weren't normal parenting. Like even as an adult, we still was just like, surely, like everyone's got one lovely parent. It's because it, doesn't really matter how old we are, but if someone suddenly starts to look out for you and you're not used to that, it feels like it's a good thing.
You start second guessing the smallest little decisions. And oftentimes, we start looking for validation again, like, am I making the right decision? Going to people who we may trust more than ourselves.
It's quite common that guys who repeatedly, or women, but people who perpetrate repeatedly will always look for somebody who's stronger, because it's almost like more of a game for them to break them down. Being human, I guess, and wanting someone to love you for who you are, which is probably what everybody wants, isn't it?
We are conditioned to be considerate of everybody else but ourselves.
Guy
Is
hitting you is flirting.
no is a complete sentence. At some point, we have to change the narrative so that people can have a better quality of life and not get sucked into these relationships simply because they're looking for validation. There may be 30 and 40-year-olds that don't even know the red signs of abuse, and this is why these raw conversations are needed.
And because we've been in such a bad abusive relationship before, we're almost like, oh well, maybe this
This
one,
is
there's
better.
only two, so I'm
Yeah.
kind of lucky because it's not the whole seven again. but we can start to speak to children. I think, we don't have to say to children about domestic abuse, but people also underestimate how many children see their parents an abusive parent, and
Hmm.
people are like, oh, it's okay, they're kids, they don't know. And
No,
I'd
there's a.
argue that kids know everything, even from a
Mhm.
very young age. And it's also hard, isn't it, to rationalize for anyone that the person, like you called yours your Prince Charming, and I used to joke that my Prince Charming was a psychopath.
This wasn't love. This all of this really wasn't love. It's hard to move beyond that, but it's possible to move beyond that.
So sometimes for me, that's more harmful than the actual person that was the perpetrator, because that was one person.
Hmm.
Whereas when like members of my family are like, oh, just get over it, you're gone now. And like they have no comprehension. And in one big part of me is really pleased that they don't understand it, because it means they've never been through it. If there's any part of you that's like, this isn't right, like listen to that voice and don't talk yourself out of it, because I think that's something that we do, isn't it? We're not disordered, we're not damaged, we're not mentally ill. I'd argue for anyone to go through traumatic experiences repeatedly
Hmm.
and not come out and be affected by it mentally.
You were not built to break. You damn sure were not built to just survive, disrupt the cycle, reclaim your life, and thrive on your own terms.